Imagine, if you will, it's Christmas Eve,
and
you're
you're
sitting by the
fireplace, waiting for old Saint Nick to shimmy down your chimney. The fire's burning, but it's okay. His Christmas magic is gonna keep him safe from those flames. You've been good all year, and therefore expecting a bounty of presents. What will Papa Christmas bring you this year? 2 years ago, it was the action figure you so dearly wanted. And last year, Optimus Prime thanked you personally after saving the world. Surely this year will somehow top both of those, no? Well, unfortunately, in thinking that, you've committed the sin of greed and will no longer be greeted by the warm, welcoming arms of Santa Claus. A cold air washes over the room as a dark, foreboding being a myth makes their way over. For you see, you wanting little child, there's only one who brings the gifts, but many, many more who deal solely in the punishment of those they deem unworthy during the Yuletide season.
So let's take a look at a few of them. Coca-Cola popularized the idea of Santa Claus delivering presents all the way back in the 1920s. And prior to that, he was just a big guy who loved red. They also invented polar bears back in 1922. And it's kind of crazy that they have all this unchecked power. But a little less crazy when you believe in Christmas magic.
Because of Christmas magic.
Couldn't happen without it.
Even without a distinct mascot, Christmas as we know it goes all the way back to the 19th century, where a magical being of some sort would hand out gifts to the youths. Although, in several parts of the world, mostly Europe, it was less about rewarding good and more about punishing bad. Because the greatest gift you can give someone is telling them they've been naughty and then eating them. A not uncommon occurrence by these Christmas monsters. Speaking of which, let's start with one that most of us are familiar with, which is Grylla the Ogre. Grylla comes from Icelandic folklore, which tells of a horrifying woman living in the hinterlands who only comes to town during Christmas time to snatch away children who have misbehaved to feed to her 13 children, aka the Yule Lads, whom she takes care of with her husband, Lepaluli, a different ogre who is very lazy and rarely leaves the cave. And for anyone out there who's surprised that she's married, shame on you. Just because she's an evil, reclusive ogress who eats children doesn't mean she's not worthy of love. Some legends say she's been married 3 times. How many times have you been married? If you happen to be unlucky enough to be caught by Grylla and thrown in her sack, it's probably over for you. Because if you manage to escape the sack, then her 13 children are probably going to get you, and you don't want to mess with the kids. They are feral, but also keep a strict schedule, where every year they show up between the 12th and 24th of December, stick around for exactly 13 days, causing very specific mischief, and then going back off to the hinterlands. Children such as Skiergamor, who will gobble up your skyr yogurt, Potaskafil, who snatches pots and scrapes out the leftovers, and Gattafer. He'll show up and straight up sniff your doorways for Luftbrow with his giant nose. Let me tell you, you don't want to deal with that. Your in-laws are in town. What are they going to say when there's an ogre child sniffing around your doorway? Do you even have Luftbrow? If you do, if you don't want any more, giving it to Yule Kid. Otherwise, the sniffing will continue and your in-laws are going to be like, see? This is why we told you not to marry him. He's got ogre children sniffing around during Christmas time. What if you had real children here instead of your fur babies? And also, let's talk about that. Sure, the children are a nightmare, but so is the Yule Cat. Or Jólakötturinn if you want to use its government name. Now this is Grylla's pet, but just like a cat, it kind of just does its own thing wandering the countryside. Jólakötturinn also has its own criteria on what it deems unworthy, and in true catty fashion, it's anyone who did not receive new clothes at Christmas time. Kinda makes that gift of socks seem a little better now, doesn't it? In some iterations, it will eat you. In other iterations, it will just eat your food. Which feels a little more insulting because now you gotta wear your raggedy wares, and a giant cat just ate your dinner. Jólakötturinn is also a relatively new addition to Christmas, being written into existence in 1862 by folklorist John Arneson. The creature's origins are believed to have come from the classic phrase, to dress the cat. One of literally a million metaphors involving felines. Writers sure do love replacing person with cat to make their work seem more colorful. Something that I personally think should be punished by the Kallikantzaroi. These goblins in the center of the earth love exactly 2 things. Sawing at the tree of life, which upon completion will lead to the collapse of the world, and Christmas. Christmas mischief specifically, because they love sweets and will gobble them up, but hate decorations and will tear them down. The more ornate the decoration, the more likely it is to be destroyed. So if you live in northern Greece, maybe don't put up all the Christmas lights. Now the Kallikantzaroi aren't simply just formed in the center of the earth. No. If a child happens to be born during the 12 days of Christmas, between December 25th and January 6th, it is at a heightened risk of becoming a Kallikantzaroi. And to prevent this, you have to wrap that baby up in garlic and then singe its toenails. Otherwise, it's headed to the sawmill down in the core of the earth. A Sisyphean task never to be complete because every time they come up for Christmas, the tree just regrows and you gotta start anew the next year. If only Christmas wasn't so magical. Tree would have fallen by now. If you happen to spot a Kallikantzaroi in your area, you can protect yourself fairly easily just by putting a colander on your door. Because just like Chinese vampires, they have this innate need to count things and will just sit on your doorstep counting every single hole, up until the sun comes up and they just run away, which is a second vampiric quality. Other legends say they can only count to 2 because 3 is an evil number, and if they say it, they'll destroy themselves. So they just count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 over again. Speaking of counting holes, let's move on to Mari Lloyd. The Christmas Zombie Horse. Now, at the risk of alienating my hundreds of thousands of Welsh viewers, hello, I kinda have to say, I don't understand Wales. The flag has a dragon on it, vowels don't seem to exist, and there's a Christmas tradition of dressing up as a horse ghost and galloping around town getting into singing battles with your neighbors. All of this is very metal, but confusing. Don't change. This one's probably the most terrifying on the list because you can just see them walking around. There's a person behind this. A real person with a real horse skull on a real stick. Nowadays it's a little more costumey, but the Mari Lloyd purists, you know they're coming out with the horse skull. If Mari Lloyd were to come to your house, it will start by enchanting you in song. In return, you would have to enchant it in song. In return, it would once again enchant you in song, and so on and so forth until one of you relents. If it's the homeowner that relents, then Mari Lloyd gets to come in and drink all your beer and have good luck for the next year. If it's Mary that relents, then you get to drink all your own beer and have good luck for the next year. Speaking of good luck, let's make a slight detour to a New Year's Eve bit of folklore, which is Homme de Nassos, aka the Man of Noses. Called this because he has a nose for every single day of the year, which he subsequently drops every day during the year. And on December 31st, it is tradition to go into town and try to find him, thinking it's going to be super easy, but you would be wrong because on December 31st, he's down to just one nose, because he dropped the rest of them the days prior. And assume the next day he just goes back into hiding for the next, 360 days? I think 5 noses is like the top amount of noses that I can go out into public with without feeling self-conscious. But I'm curious at knowing what your number is. Is it 10? 15? 30 noses? Okay, back to Christmas. Let's finish things off with Santa Claus. Santa? No way! He watches me sleep to make sure I'm being nice as I slumber. Cool. We picture Santa going around the world on his sleigh by his lonesome, but the thing is, he hasn't always been alone. He has had several assistants throughout the year, and most of them, not great. For example, Belsnickel, the original coal stocking stuffer. Then you have Nectarupart, who would show up to your house and straight up beat your ass if you didn't know your prayers. And if you did know your prayers, he'd give you an apple. Krampus, the most famous Christmas demon, is tight with claws. Or Svart Piet, who would show up and snatch you off to Spain. But he did eventually have a Loki-esque arc and become a good guy. And also, that's all I'm saying on Svart Piet. If Santa was so noble, he wouldn't allow these jerks to ride around with him. And I didn't even mention the reindeers, who were straight up bullies to Rudolph, because he had a red nose. The man is turning a blind eye to the atrocities occurring under his leadership, and I, for one, won't be silent this night anymore. He has gotten away with a big jolly fella shtick for far too long. We know who you are, Saint Nick. Thinking the North Pole, away from the watchful eyes and the jurisdiction of any major nation, is going to protect you. Not anymore. It's time that we strip him of the Christmas magic that has diplomatic immunity and hold his feet to the fire for real and make him answer for what's been happening in his factory. So we don't get another Krampus situation in another 5 to 10 years. Because this has happened too many times. And what's the deal with the elves? Okay, I'm too worked up. I'm going to save the elf thing for later. If you like it, like button, subscribe button. Maybe send an angry letter to 123 Elf Road, North Pole, area code 888888. That's supposed to be 58. I don't know how many I said. I'm overwhelmed with rage right now. I'm going to go off and cool down. Okay, bye now.